How many of you have ever walked away from a conversation, your stomach in knots, your heart racing, because you said too much, because you over-explained yourself into exhaustion? We've all been there. That moment where silence would have been power, but instead words came spilling out, words you didn't owe, explanations no one asked for, apologies that were never necessary. And when you walked away, it wasn't relief you felt, it was regret. A sense that you had handed over pieces of yourself you didn't need to give. Let me say this, over-explaining is not kindness, it's not clarity, it's self-betrayal. When we over-explain, what we're really saying is, I don't trust that my boundaries are enough. I don't believe I'm worthy without justification. I don't feel safe unless I make you comfortable. But here's the truth. Your worthiness is not a courtroom trial. You don't need evidence. You don't need witnesses. You don't need a closing argument. You don't need to hand over every corner of your heart to prove that you belong. What you need is the courage to stand in the pause, the strength to let your no be enough, the conviction to believe that silence does not mean guilt, over-explaining, that's giving away your power, protecting your boundaries, that's reclaiming it. Let's get real for a moment. Why do we do it? Why do we keep explaining ourselves until we're raw? The truth is, over-explaining is born from fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear that if we don't justify ourselves, we'll lose love, respect, or belonging. And so we scramble for words like armor, we stack reasons, excuses, and justifications as if they'll build a wall high enough to protect us. But let me tell you, it's not a wall, it's a cage. And every time we over-explain, we lock ourselves inside. We over-explain because somewhere along the line, someone told us our no wasn't valid unless it came with a perfectly wrapped explanation. Someone convinced us that our choices only had value if they were palatable to others, and slowly we began to believe that. But here's the hard truth. No one is entitled to the inside of your heart every time they ask. You don't owe a dissertation on why you're tired, why you declined an invitation, or why you set a boundary. Over-explaining is a performance, and when we perform, we abandon ourselves for the comfort of others. So the question becomes this: what would it look like to stop performing, to let your no be a complete sentence, to believe that your boundaries are valid, full stop? That right there is where freedom begins. Here's what we rarely admit out loud. Over-explaining comes with a price tag. Every time you over-explain, you spend emotional energy you can't get back. You give away your calm. You hand over your peace. And the cruel part is, most of the time, the person on the other end didn't even need the explanation. They weren't keeping score. You were. Think about it. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and replayed it on a loop? You think, why did I say that much? Why did I give them all that detail? And then the shame spiral begins. You feel exposed, small, maybe even foolish. That's the emotional hangover of over-explaining. It doesn't just drain your spirit. It erodes your confidence. You start doubting yourself. You second-guess your decisions. You weaken your trust in your own voice. And let's be clear, when we don't trust our voice, we hand the microphone to everyone else. Over-explaining also teaches people how to treat you. It signals a push me and I'll justify myself. Doubt me and I'll hand you proof. Question me and I'll open the vault of my soul just to make you comfortable. And that is too high a cost. Your boundaries are meant to protect your energy, not drain it. Every over-explanation is a crack in that protection. So the question is, are you willing to stop leaking power? Let me say something that may sting when you over-explain. You turn your boundaries into apologies. Think about it. You say, I can't come tonight because I'm really tired and I had a long week and I promised myself I'd rest. And please don't be mad. Do you hear it? That's not a boundary. That's begging for permission. A boundary is this, I won't be coming tonight. Full stop. No justification. No speech. No need to soften it so the other person won't feel disappointed, because boundaries are not weapons. Boundaries are not punishments. And boundaries are not apologies. They are simply the lines that protect your dignity, your well-being, your time, and your energy. They are declarations of self-respect. But when we over-explain, we hand over our power and say, here, let me convince you my boundary is valid. Here, let me prove I'm still lovable after I say no. The moment we start proving, we've already lost. Because the truth is, you do not owe anyone an emotional essay to validate your needs. You do not need to dress up your no to make it more digestible. Boundaries are enough without the decoration. They are complete without the backstory. And they do not require anyone's permission slip to stand. So the question becomes, are you ready to stop apologizing for protecting yourself? Here's the hardest part. We don't over-explain because we love clarity. We over-explain because we're afraid of being misunderstood, afraid someone will think less of us, afraid of being called selfish, rude, or cold. And let's be honest, most of us were trained in this fear from childhood. Maybe you heard, don't say no, it's impolite. Or if you want people to like you, explain yourself. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being accepted required shrinking yourself, smoothing every edge, justifying every choice. So now, when you set a boundary, your body panics. You think, What if they think I don't care? What if they walk away? What if they stop loving me? And outpours the explanation, long, detailed, desperate for reassurance. But here's the truth: over explaining doesn't earn you safety. It doesn't guarantee love. It doesn't protect you from judgment. It just drains you. Because people who truly respect you don't need a 3-page essay to honor your boundaries. They need one word, no. And the ones who demand more, the ones who push and prod until you unravel your soul, those are not safe people. Those are not your people. The fear is real, yes, but it is not a compass. You cannot keep living in fear of disappointing others while abandoning yourself. The deeper question is, who deserves your truth and who only wants your performance? Let me tell you something radical. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power. We've been conditioned to believe that if we don't explain, if we don't justify, then people will assume the worst. And maybe sometimes they will. But here's the truth: their assumptions are not your problem. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a declaration. It says, I trust myself enough not to perform for you. It says, my decision does not need to be padded with excuses. It says, I am allowed to end the sentence where I choose. And I know it feels terrifying at first. The pause after you say no, the moment where you resist filling the space with a speech, your heart pounds. Your brain screams, say something, explain, make it softer. But if you can breathe through that moment, something magical happens. You realize the world doesn't end. People might look at you differently. Some will respect you more. Some might get uncomfortable. But the silence teaches you something crucial. You can survive being misunderstood. That is freedom. That is courage. That is the beginning of boundary mastery. Because silence is not absence. Silence is presence. And when you stop over explaining, you create space for your worth to speak louder than your words ever could. So what would it mean for you to practice the power of silence? Let's cut to the chase. No is a full sentence, period. But for many of us, saying no without a cushion feels unbearable. We reach for explanations like life rafts. No, I can't because I have too much work. Or no, I can't because I already promised someone else. Or no, I can't because I'm so exhausted. And suddenly that sacred no has been smothered under a mountain of justifications. The truth, every extra word is a leak in your boundary. It invites negotiation. It tells the other person, if you argue with my reason, maybe I'll change my mind. And before you know it, your boundary has evaporated. But when you say no, just no, you're declaring that your boundary is not up for debate. You're saying my well-being is reason enough. Does it feel uncomfortable at first? Yes. Does it feel like you're breaking some unspoken rule? Absolutely. But here's the reframe every time you say no, without the long explanation, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself that you are enough without the performance. And listen, your no doesn't make you cruel. It makes you honest. It makes you whole. It makes you free. Because at the end of the day, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to, here's the secret, when you stop over explaining, you're not just protecting boundaries, you're building trust with yourself. Think about it. Every time you hand out an unnecessary explanation, what you're really saying is, I don't fully trust my decision. I don't fully trust my worth. And that doubt is corrosive. It eats away at your confidence and until you start believing you owe the world endless justification. But when you stand in your truth, when you resist the urge to pile on words, something shifts inside you. You begin to feel it, self-trust. That quiet, steady voice that whispers, I know who I am. I know what I need. I don't need to sell my soul to be accepted. And self-trust, that's liberation. Because when you trust yourself, you stop chasing approval like a starving animal. You stop twisting your voice to sound sweeter, smaller, safer. You begin to show up as the unedited version of you, the version that doesn't explain, doesn't apologize, doesn't beg to be understood. And here's the miracle: when you live from that place, the right people lean in closer. They don't need your over-explaining because your presence is enough. Your clarity is enough. Self-trust is the foundation of boundaries. It is the root of freedom. And it begins the moment you decide, I don't know a story for my no, let your no be enough. Let's be honest, stopping the cycle of over-explaining isn't comfortable. It's courageous. When you first try it, your chest might tighten. You'll feel the urge to fill the silence, to soften your answer, to make everyone else more at ease. That's because your nervous system has been wired to believe that belonging depends on pleasing. But here's the truth: belonging built on performance is not belonging, it's captivity. Real belonging happens when people accept you without the song and dance. Real love doesn't require a footnote, and real respect doesn't need a presentation to back up your boundaries. So yes, courage will feel awkward. Courage will feel heavy. Courage will feel like breaking a rule you followed your whole life. But courage is also the gateway to freedom. It's the moment you say, I'd rather be true to myself than comfortable for someone else. And here's the beautiful part: courage is contagious. The moment you stop over explaining, you give others permission to do the same. You model a new way of being way where dignity is not negotiated and worth is not proven. So the choice is this: do you keep chasing comfort, smoothing every edge with explanations, or do you choose courage even when it trembles in your voice? Because the bravest sentence you may ever speak is the one without an explanation. Here's the truth I want you to carry with you. Over-explaining is not connection, it's self-abandonment. Every time you strip your no down with reasons, every time you decorate your boundaries with excuses, you chip away at your own power. And for what? To be understood, to be approved of, to avoid someone else's disappointment. That's too high a cost. Because here's what I know: you are allowed to take up space without proving your worth. You are allowed to rest without permission. And you are allowed to change your mind without a footnote. And you are allowed to set boundaries without a single word of justification. Your life is not a courtroom. Your choices are not up for cross-examination. You do not owe the world your constant defense. What you owe to yourself, to your spirit, is honesty, clarity, and courage. So when the words rise in your throat begging to pour out, pause, breathe, and remember, silence can be the loudest declaration of all. Stop over-explaining. Protect your boundaries. Trust your voice. And let this be the ending note that echoes in your bones: you are worthy. You are enough. And your no, on its own, is the bravest, boldest, most beautiful sentence you will ever speak.